pleasure to introduce our first speaker of the session of the seminar of the Networks and AI seminar this year, who is Valerio De Pascal from Italy. And with Valerio, we have had a lot of interesting discussions on hypergraphs in the actually AI-related event, ACDL. And so without further ado, thank you, Valeria, for coming. Please, the floor is yours and take it away from here. Yes, you need to unmute yourself if you are muted. If you can, maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Sorry.
Perfect.
So I'm so glad to be here and present the one which is actually my first research work, which is a collaboration within 3 different universities around Italy. The first one is Università della Campania Regina Vitelli. The other one is my university, University of Salerno, and the other one is the University of Turin. This work is related to hypergraph motifs, and in particular hypergraph motif representation learning, in which we defined a way to build motif-aware representation, motif-aware embeddings, and solved and defined a motif-related task, which is the motif prediction in real-world networks. But let's start. I'm a master degree graduate in University of Salerno. I just graduated this July, and I'm collaborating since my bachelor degree in IS Lab in Uni Salerno. I'm passionate in complex network, generative AI, and graph neural networks, and I've currently applied for a PhD program in my university. In this seminar, let's starting slowly. I will briefly introduce you the concept related to a motif in hypergraphs, a motif prediction, which is the core of our work, our paper published at the KDD 25 conference. And then I will tell you how to use the code our work to build embeddings and use our model with your own datasets and many other datasets. But let's start. Let's talk about graphs in particular, which is a discrete mathematical structure typically used to represent complex systems in which entities can be connected within other entities in binary relations. In this case, a graph is mathematically defined as a pair of two sets, a set of nodes and a set of edges, which are basically the interaction and the connection between a pair of nodes. And as I already said, those are commonly used to represent a system where entities can be involved in binary relations. But however, usually this simple structure is not enough to represent a very complex system with group-wise relations, and that's why we need something more articulated. We are talking about hypergraphs. Hypergraphs are a generalization of common graphs. Those are also a discrete mathematical structure and are also defined as a pair of two sets, in which the first set, as for graphs, is the set of nodes, however, the entities of our system, and the other set is a set of group-wise relation. So we don't just have simple pair relations, but we can have relations between 3 nodes, 4 nodes, and so on. And those are very useful to represent system like protein-protein interaction network or biological system, and also social networks, which are very complex and can involve group-wise relations. This kind of structure is gaining also a lot of interest in recent years because of they're powerful. What's about motifs? Motifs in graphs are like statistically significant local recurrent pattern. In this slide, we can see three different typologies of motifs. The first one is a tree star, in which we have a central node and three different nodes connected to the central node. The other one is a click, which is a particularly interesting motif in which you have four nodes connected by each other in a complete graph. Another one is a four path, which is basically a path from a node to another. So what does it mean to be statistically significant? This means that in real-world network, the occurrence, the frequency of this kind of sub-pattern is different and more frequent compared to random graphs and other type of graphs. So there's probably a kind of rule determining the occurrence of this kind of substructure in real-world networks. In hypergraphs, we also have a definition of motifs, which is different compared to graph, because in graphs we define motifs as uh, a pattern of interaction between nodes. In this case, we are talking about pattern of interaction between hyperedges. The original paper, which introduced the concept and the idea of hypergraph motif, defined this particular sub-hypergraphs as a group of hyperedges connected each other. By considering three different hyperedges, we can define 26 different hypergraph motifs. And trivially, we can say that if a motif M built from three different hyperedges E, E, J, E, K exist, also the hyperedges involved in these motifs exist in the network. So an hypergraph motif is defined by the intersections of the connectivity pattern, and there are three different important properties of these motifs. The first one is the exhaustiveness, that says an h-motifs capture any possible connectivity pattern of three different hyperedges. The uniqueness, in which we say that the connectivity pattern of three hyperedges is captured by at most one hypergraph motifs, and the size independent, meaning that the connectivity pattern can be described independently from the size of the hyperedges involved in the h-motifs, meaning that an hyperedge can be larger than the others or smaller, and there will be always an hypergraph motifs of the same typology. This kind of motifs are so important because in the original paper, the authors generally defined, studied the statistically significant of the 26 different hypergraph motifs in real-world networks by generating random graphs using the Chung-Lu random hypergraph model and comparing the occurrence in the random graph and also in real one, and discovering that by constructing a characteristic profile, which is essentially the distribution of hypergraph motifs normalized in real-world networks, we can determine and distinguish the domain of real-world networks, meaning that this kind of motifs appear with different frequencies in real-world networks compared to random hypergraphs. At this point, let's talk about the problem definition of the paper I mentioned before, hypergraph motif representation learning. The problem definition, the problem we defined and solved it in this paper is related to predicting motif in real-world networks, meaning that we have an hypergraphs describing a real-world network, and we have a subset of hyperedges, which is the subset of the partially observed hyperedges, meaning that there could be a temporal hypergraphs in which we can just see a subset of the already occurred hyperedges, or also an hypergraph in which there is a part of the topology which is hidden. We have a set also of the of all possible h-motifs of type T, since this kind of problem is defined for each topology of motifs. And we have a subset of the observed instances of h-motifs and the unobserved instances of h-motifs. We aim to build a scoring function using some technique that I will talk to you about in next slides. And this scoring function should provide a nice score for motifs that will occur in the next future in the evolution of the network, and a low score for motifs that are less likely to occur in the next future of the network. So in general, just to stay simple, in the image I provided in this slide, we are trying to predict whether a motif is contained in the green set or in the gray set. So the h-motif, the hypergraph motif prediction consists in just predicting whether a given hypergraph motifs will appear or not in a network, in an observed network. Since this is the first work that tries to solve this kind of problems, meaning that in graphs there are many other works trying to predict the occurrence or determine the appearance of motifs inside of networks. We had the problem that there were no baselines, no just built solution ready to use for to solve our problem. So we used the already existing hyperlink prediction solutions, which are basically solutions built to predict whether an hyperedge is more likely or less likely to occur in the network. And then we assumed the independence of hyperedges in networks and obtained the score of the occurrence of hypergraph motifs as the product of the scores of each hyperedge involved in a motif we want to predict. So we selected a group of solutions, already built solutions for hyperedge prediction. Some are taken from a survey for hyperlink prediction and are common neighbors, which is also a link prediction solution for graphs, Atomic color, Jack coefficient, so many popular solutions. And there are also representation learning based solution as Notobek Billen, which is a specific for hypergraph solution to build embedding. And also a grouped solution built with Notobek and Hypergraph convolutional network, which is a convolutional operator for hypergraphs used to build and refine embedding representations. At this point, let's talk about the idea of embedding. In this case, we are talking about hypergraph node embeddings as a mapping function that goes from the set of nodes to a latent space. So we are mapping a single node of the hypergraph to a point or a vector in the latent space. So this function phi is essentially a mapping function that should capture topological information in the network and map it in a latent space, and is particularly useful for many kind of tasks, and in particular for our task. So to account this problem, the motif prediction problem, we defined an end-to-end. Yes.
Valerio, just 1 second, because I wanted to stop here for a second to just understand if I understand, because you presented the concept of hypergraphs, right? Which is really always good to do because you know sometimes people don't work with hypergraphs and they need to know what definition you're using, and then you presented the motifs of hypergraphs. And now you're presenting right the whole idea later on that will be related for the embeddings of hypergraphs, right? Because you were speaking right about them. But embeddings, you are embedding basically the whole hypergraph, right? So if we would, for example, have a hypergraph made out of brain data or something, right? You would want just to get an idea of a practical, what is the embedding will be useful for, because it will help, I think, people to understand, and me too.
Sure.
Thank you.
So since we are trying to predict the occurrence of motifs, we need a representation of motifs. We want to embed motifs, not the entire hypergraph. And we start building this kind of embeddings of motifs starting from nodes, then hyperedges, and then motifs. So we are aggregating these embeddings, and we aim to build embeddings of motifs. I don't know if that's clear.
So it's clear, but because you were mentioning indeed the motifs before, right, which you find as sub structures inside the hypergraph, right, then you will use them essentially for building the whole thing afterwards, the whole embedding of the whole structure afterwards. I mean, first you need to do that, resolve this problem for specifically, right, for motifs, of course. Okay.
Yes. Can I continue? Yeah.
Yes, and it's just a practical question, which I didn't want to interrupt your presentation. Okay.
Sure. So let's talk about the end-to-end architecture. So we wanted to build hypergraph motif embedding, and then those embeddings are used to produce the scoring function I mentioned before. That scoring function will be used to predict the occurrence of motifs in network, or just the likelihood of that motif. So we're starting from simple node embeddings. Those node embeddings can be produced by common solutions. The first one we use is Node2Vec, which is a popular graph embedding generator. And the other one is VLane. VLane is an embedding method that works specifically on hypergraphs, and is a recent work proposed in a paper of 2024. At this point, those embeddings are fed inside of an hypergraph convolutional network, which operator is described by the formula on the right. And this is just a simulation of the propagation of the embeddings from nodes to other nodes within the same hyperedge. It's a little bit tricky, but it's a very important operator that is useful to produce refined embeddings that are then aggregated, in this case, using a mean operator, mean pooling operator, to produce hyperedge embeddings. So at this point, we have hyperedge embeddings. Those can be used to perform hyperedge tasks, but those are not enough. At this point, we fed those hyperedge embeddings into a simple graph convolution on a particular structure which is built from the original hypergraph dataset. This structure is the line graph. The line graph on which the graph convolution is performed is built by constructing a graph in which each node is an hyperedge of the original hypergraph, and those nodes are connected if there is a non-empty intersection between the hyperedges. At this point, we perform a mean pooling aggregation to produce motif embeddings. And eventually, these embeddings can be used to predict and train the entire architecture in a particular task related to motifs, which in this case is the motif prediction. So, since we assumed that we solved this task in a supervised way, in which we have positive labels and negative labels to the instance of our datasets, meaning that our architecture, our model will see positive motifs that we know that are that exist in the network, and negative motifs that we know that are not in the network. And we need a non-trivial negative sampling techniques to produce negative motifs that our network should look at and say and train. Those kind of motifs should be, of course, non-trivial, meaning that those should be similar to positive samples, the one that exists in the observed network, but still different, so that actually do not exist in networks. The solution we found to produce negative samples is starting from positive samples. So every negative sample should be a valid hypergraph motifs of the same typology of the original one, meaning that if you are talking about a particular intersection pattern, we should produce a negative sample with the same intersection pattern. There are three different hyperparameter in this negative sampling technique. The first one is alpha, which is the ratio of nodes replaced in original positive samples, and beta, which is the number of negative samples to produce and generate for each positive sample. Then we have a procedure that takes as input set the hyperedge and a probability, and replaces the particular nodes inside of the hyperedge with other nodes picked from the entire network. So just to be precise, we are replacing nodes in the intersections of hyperedges, not just in hyperedges, to maintain the same typology of the hypergraph motif. So this is just an overview of the entire pipeline. So we are starting from the original hypergraph. We sample 20% of the hyperedges from the network and remove them from the set of observed hyperedges. Then we extract those motifs and use those motifs to build negative samples that are used during the training phase of our model. The negative sampling algorithm can be used also in three different settings, which are a ranked based, a probability based, and a random based, meaning that for the procedure gamma in the last point, we can replace a node by using just a rank. So by ranking other nodes in the network and replacing with nodes with higher rank, by using also this scores as a probability, and also by replacing with random. So those are the three different possibilities. So let's talk about the experimental settings of for our experiments. We trained our model on 26 different on a cluster of 26 different machines with 8-core GPUs, 16 gigabyte of GPUs, and 150 gigabyte of storage. Averages are split in 80-20 training test split. We limited also the hypergraph motif positive sample count to a maximum of 10,000, because the amount of hypergraph motifs can reach easily a number of million or also billion. And we tested our model on 4 different real-world datasets that are listed on the left: Emil Ron, Contact Primary School, High School, and Cora, available online. For the results, we obtained good results for our model. Our model is are the two on the last 2 columns. So this table is divided as the left part is a dataset, the right part is another dataset. Each row is a different typology of hypergraph motifs. And of course, there's also an ablation study for our model, since in the last third there's the model villain, which is just the embedding that already shows good results for our on this task. But by attaching the last part of our architecture that produces motif embeddings, we obtain better results. We also obtained good results with the other datasets. We can show with this critical difference diagram that the scores of our model are essentially the best. Usually positioning as the first one, and there is a low statistical significance with the other version of our model using not2vec compared to the one using villain. Other consideration about the choice of using the three different replacement procedure I mentioned before, that by using the ranked by using the ranked procedure, we obtained the broader difference from with other models. And using random and probability, we obtain just a small difference with other models, meaning that the most non-trivial solution to build negative is the ranked one. About the right side, the right chart, we can see that by increasing the number of motifs to more than 10,000, the results will get flat. So 10,000 is a good limit for the number of motifs to train and evaluate our solution. Okay, at this point, I finished the part about the description of our model. Now I will talk about how to use the model, how to download it, and incorporate your own dataset. If there's any question here. Yes, please.
Yes. I think, yeah, I had one small question about the model question itself. I mean, the model in the sense of when you say that you are, well, for example, here, right? What you show,
Yes.
maybe you could explain a bit more the left plot here, because I know that it is in the paper.
Oh, sure.
Which you have now, but because it's a whole hypergraph, right? That you see here.
Yes.
In the
Those
left
are plots.
plot.
Those are plots of the embeddings of motifs. The yellow one are negative samples, and the purple ones are positive samples. So random probability and in the right side ranked dots show that there is a higher a linear separable space of dots, meaning that the embedding built from ranked motifs, maybe ranked negative samples, is better.
And
And can be separated
but in
easily.
general,
Yes.
okay, in general, that is the main, because at first I didn't realize that it was the realization of the same, right? It is the same dataset in that case.
Yes.
Right? So that
Right.
was the question. I mean, just to understand, because it, depending on method you choose, it will be so different.
Yeah, depending. Yeah, there's
Yes.
a more overlap, for example, with using the probability negative sampling and also using the random. But the most important thing is that there is an high discrepancy with with models on different models, meaning that by using random and probability, the scores in this table which are reported in the paper are always almost always I. Also, by considering a simple model like common neighbor, the results are very close to 80 of rock, which is the evaluation metric. So it's very important to define
because I know
yes.
that there are many ways. There are many ways to compare, right? Also, many methods, and these metrics I'm not familiar with them actually. I mean, with some, so that's why I'm asking this very probably by basic questions. But it's not that I'm familiar with those. But I will check that in your paper. That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So, if there is any other question, or I can go on. Okay. So our paper has been awarded. Yeah. Okay.
Please
Our paper has
continue.
been awarded. Yes. Sorry. Okay. So there's
Please
probably
continue. Yes, I didn't want.
yeah. There's probably some delay.
Yes.
Okay, our paper has been awarded with the ACM Artifact Availability Badge, and this also has been my first review experience in my entire life. So, so I know well how this review procedure works. There are many different kind of artifact badge provided that can be provided by ACM. The one available for this conference was the artifact available badge, meaning that it just confirm and ensure that the artifact is available and is related to the paper. But trust me, the artifact also works. The review phase is consisting in just checking the artifact published on Zenodo and check that everything is in the right place and there is nothing strange in the code or in datasets or everything the authors have published. And our code is also available in GitHub, which is on this URL, and also on Zenodo if you want to check out our code. You can git clone our code and also download the software used to implement this code, which is Python in this version. The entire code is written in PyTorch, and there's also a requirements file that can help you in installing the correct version of each Python library we used. And of course, you may need a GPU to go faster with this code since using the cluster that our university provided us to run our these experiments, the entire code took around 1 or 2 days to execute for all the typology of motifs. To include your own datasets is so easy if you have additional datasets you want to test using this particular model, or you want to build embeddings based on the motif prediction tasks. You can just navigate inside of the dataset folder in our code and put your own inside of this with the underscores. You just need two different files. The first one is the nverts file, which essentially contains the amount of nodes per hyperedges, and another file which is the ID of the nodes in the hyperedge. So the first one is just a way to tell how many nodes that the software should the script should take and read from the right file. At this point, you can run the code by executing this command using Python 3, and you can specify the hypergraph motif ID the dataset. In this case, there are the 4 different datasets we use it for in our paper, but you can also include your own dataset. And specify also the negative sampling mode you want to use for to generate negative samples. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, again. And that's all. If you have any question, feel free to ask or contact any of the other authors of this paper. Thank you so much.